recorded and then we posted. All right, so we are now recording. So this is actually what's going to happen. We're going to start recording. We're going to start keeping all these awesome information in the recording so that we can hopefully make it available later on.
Yeah.
A couple more things. There might be. This is up to Andy, of course. But if there are like, uh, you know, breaks or anything that you want to take, just take a break for a coffee or whatever. We will stop the recording, and that basically generates different files. Just letting you guys. So if you hear that the
Ooh.
recording has stopped, it just means that it's going to be separate files of the same recording. So don't worry about it. You have the ability to chat in here, indirectly in Zoom, but also we have the dedicated channel in Discord. So we're gonna keep monitoring those, if whatever you prefer, as well, and then we'll be able to actually pass along some of the questions to Andy, if they're relevant to what he's showing, as well. But yeah, other than that, I'm just going to stop talking now and let Andy take it away. And I'm just gonna turn off my camera and audio and just basically enjoy the show.
Sounds good. I'm just reading the chat here and I'm seeing people from Calgary and Edmonton and Mexico. It's really cool. I'm seeing people from around the world. So thanks for making the time to be out here. I know it's probably really late for a lot of you guys. So yeah, I'm really excited. So let's just get started so you guys can maybe go to bed at some time, get some sleep. So yeah, the title of this workshop is 3D character thumbnails, fast prototyping in ZBrush. And I'll go into what that means in a few minutes here. But first, I just want to introduce myself. Um, my name's Andy Taylor, short for Andrew. I'm a 3D character artist by trade, but I do a lot of concept art as well. I've had the privilege to do a lot of concept and like early design and pre-production. Um, so that's kind of like where my passion is. I love character designs and I love especially ZBrush. It was my first software that I ever dabbled in with 3D. So I've been using it for, oh geez, like 15 years at this point, I think. So yeah, it's my favorite software ever of all time. And it's hard for me to sometimes open up Photoshop and do silhouette design. So that's kind of the basis for why I kind of designed this workflow for myself. So there's a QR code here. That's just a link to my socials. I'm going to be posting, hopefully in the future, some like resources as well, brushes, etc. So feel free to scan that if you want. I'll share it again later. But yeah, that's just
Sorry,
a
Andy.
link to like,
I cannot see
yeah.
the QR code.
Oh, sorry. Did I not share my screen?
You're sharing it, but I can see like a browser and some trees in the background.
Oh, okay. I shared the wrong screen.
Oh, okay.
It's classic. Sorry, guys. My bad.
While Andy does that, I just want to remind you guys that something that I forgot to mention, we also have live captioning and live translation. So right now you can enable the closed captioning from the Zoom meeting, and if you prefer to get translation on your language or you prefer language, you can also do that as well. All right, that's it for me.
Amazing. Cool. Can you see the right screen? Does that look right? QR code?
Yep, that looks fine.
Perfect. Great. Okay. I do that during work meetings like all the time, so it's yeah, so that's just that's just me. Okay, so moving on. These are some of my recent works that I've done. You might have seen me post some of these things on Instagram. It's kind of like a mix of like 2D sketches that I like to do, um, as well as like 3D. I Most of my work, most of the time that I spend professionally is done doing more highly detailed stuff, a lot of UVing, a lot of retopo, a lot of texturing. And so I really like to in my free time and during my personal time for personal projects, I like to work really fast and just kind of like express myself creatively. So I should say also too that anyone familiar with the Extra Mile course, one of the first module is the quick win, and that's kind of changed everything for me in the sense because when I started off doing 3D character art, I mean, we put so much pressure on ourselves to have like a really highly polished piece of work, which is amazing, and you should have that on your portfolio. But I actually found like one of my favorite pieces that I ever did was this guy, and this took like 2, 3 days, and it was just following really simple techniques, and not like overthinking or stressing on the details and just kind of having fun with design. So that was kind of what inspired me to kind of start working in this way about a year ago. And I've kind of been refining things since then. Um, so what are we going to do in this workshop? Well, the idea is we're going to generate as many ideas as possible, as quickly as possible in 3D. Like Pablo mentioned, the idea oftentimes in pre-production, concept artists, when they're working on character designs, they want to establish, um, a very solid initial read on a character. And that's where silhouette design comes into play. So if you're not familiar with silhouettes, essentially they're just, they could be solid black or any color really, but really just a solid shape. Maybe they're monochromatic as well. Um, and the idea is that at first glance, you kind of know what that character is. You know if they're, cute and plushy, or you know if they're, aggressive and evil. So um, it's actually a technique that's pretty simple, but for some reason I have always struggled to get out of my own head with it. Oftentimes, I mean, I suck at drawing in perspective, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of initially just embraced 3D is because I didn't really have to think about that as much. And even in like 2D silhouette design, I find that sometimes I struggle with that, even though you're supposed to be very loose and fast with it. So, it's a very valuable tool, and everybody should be able to do it. It should be something that you should do. Like you should do silhouette drawings and sketches. But for me personally, in my free time, I want to work in 3D usually. And so this is how I've developed my approach to kind of bridge the gap between the speed of working in 2D. Like in 2D, you can, make a silhouette drawing. You could probably make this in a few paint strokes, right? So it's hard to be as fast and to emulate this process in 2D. But what I'm trying to do here is bridge the gap as quickly as possible. So the idea is that you're coming up with thumbnails. You can apply a mask over these, or I'll show you later a silhouette shader over these drawings, or these sculpts, I should say, and you're going to be able to get a really quick read. And each of these took maybe 5 to 10 minutes each, really quick thumbnail drawings. So they're sculpts. So a little bit about what the process looks like. I'm sure you've been seeing me post some of these. I've done these recently to kind of practice this workflow more and get ready for this workshop. So these are very quick design sculpts. Um, I would say they roughly took between 30 minutes to 2 hours for each of these drawings, or sculpts. I keep saying drawings, design sculpts. So how we're gonna get there, I'll show you. It's a workflow that utilizes meshes as a starting point. The idea behind that is to just eliminate any kind of barrier for just designing. If you're making like a human bipedal, why not just why do you have to worry about the anatomy when you can just hop in and sculpt if you're trying to design like a costume or something like that? Is kind of the idea. Um, for creature design, if you got the email with some of my assets that I've released, one of them is called AT Bodybuilder Brush, and that's essentially just a kit bashing like insert mesh brush in ZBrush, that has essentially like bone shapes, and different anatomy parts that I use to kind of come up with maybe non-bipedal character or creature designs. In this case, it is a bipedal, but I wanted something a little bit different, and so I started in that way. Um, I kind of with this the idea behind this brush, the idea was to kind of emulate some of off. I mean, when I learned how to draw in 2D, when I was trying to draw the human figure, I would often start by drawing the joints and then the bones. Um, I think Loomis is the name of the the instructional anatomy book. Great reference. I highly recommend checking that out. But for 2D anatomy and like figure drawing. But anyways, I was trying to replicate that process as well in 3D. So a few more examples of what this workflow looks like. These are again like all maybe an hour to 2 hours for these. These are essentially the end result of the process where you have a bunch of thumbnails. Maybe you like some of them, maybe you hate others, but you can maybe combine them and mash them together and pick like a few that maybe stand out to you. And that's the idea is that in a professional setting, if you're starting your workday and you have to make like these character designs and you have a mood board and you need to come up with like an idea, the idea is that you can maybe spend a few hours, generate, 10 thumbnails and, pitch those like in-house to, an art director or send them to a client as like a jumping off point. And, you might find out really quick what they like and what they don't like. And so the idea is that these are very quick sketches, prototypes. Um, that if they're never used again, if they're never used again, then that's completely fine. Like they could disappear and you didn't spend that much time on them. Um, you know, but maybe at the end of it you have like a nice little collection of sketches that kind of show like your process to the end result. So um of course, you can take this process a lot further if you want. Um, you can, if there's a design that you really like, you can obviously add a lot of more detail to it. You can use alpha maps. You can retopologize these and texture them. You can even overpaint them as well. So there's a lot of methods that you can do. Like this, for example, was just like a really quick, I took it into Krita or Photoshop or something, and I, just like overpainted it and add some lines to it just to kind of give it like a slightly more polished result. I don't actually like it, but I think it was the strongest of that set that I did at the time. So that's why I took it the extra step further. So we're not really going to be covering that in this workshop. We're just going to be focused on the iterative process of creating like the sculpts. So to summarize, about how we get there is we're going to be using a lot of really simple tools that are fast and effective. We're going to be using ideally one subtool the whole time, maybe two or three for like props and weapons and stuff like that, or maybe gear. Maybe something that you want to have like a specific kind of look to it. We'll touch on that a little bit later. Uh, we also want to embrace a lot of accidents. At this stage, I'm not really focusing on making something that looks pretty. I'm focusing on making something that I think is like cool and interesting and unique. So, um, I'm not going to be, maybe let me know if I'm moving a little bit too fast with the process, but the idea is that we're going to be trying to generate these really quickly. And so, maybe your brush stroke bleeds from like one part of the mesh onto the next part and you have like a weird artifact. Maybe that's like a design cue, maybe that's something that you can work with. So the idea is that we're going to be embracing those accidents. And then we're going to be iterating constantly. So we're going for quantity over quality here. We're going to want to make as many as possible. I'm going to be doing a live demo and I'm going to try and make as many as possible. Um, and we'll see where that takes us. So it's this is I think it's a very versatile workflow that can be used, I think, for you could use it to warm up before you start work. Maybe before you start work, you can just hop in and give yourself like 30 minutes to an hour and just try and come up with as many sketches as you want. You can also use it as an opportunity to practice, to study like an object. Like if you have some kind of reference that you like, then maybe you can use this as an opportunity to study that reference. So, yeah. And this is kind of corny, but I just want to share this. I have a monkey on my desk. It's like a hear no evil monkey. And this is for me to remind myself to kind of just get out of my own head and ignore those thoughts of self-doubt that kind of pop in when you're working on game art. So this is this is you can also use it as like a rubber duck. This is gonna sound insane, but maybe it's something that you can talk to kind of like bounce ideas off of if you're working in isolation. So it's kind of like my little resource that I have there, my little buddy. He's on my desk all the time, and yeah, it helps me a lot. So, anyways, moving on. Um, so I went ahead and I collected some reference, and I'm going to show you how I do that using. I'm sure most of you are probably familiar that I'm using a PureRef board. PureRef is an amazing piece of reference software. Um, it allows you to just like really organize things in a way that I have never been able to do. I don't know if any of you have ever been on Reddit. Like, how do I collect reference? I've done that, and people are, it's PureRef is the way to do it. It's by far I found like the best tool to like compile a mood board and kind of establish what you want to do with these images. But what I do before that actually, and I'll bring this down here, is I found this software called Eagle. And usually when I'm working, I have these two side by side on another monitor. And what Eagle is I think it's like $30 lifetime software. So it's pretty affordable. Um, and the idea is that it's just this collects your visual library in one place and it's stored in one file that's transportable. So if you reformat your computer or if you're, at a workstation or something like that, then maybe you can bring this in and have all these references that you've collected over the years, pardon me, all in one place. And there's a lot of functionality here. Like you can filter by color, you can categorize all these images if you want. You can use them for, you know, like anatomy. You can use them for textures. I think I have a folder for textures somewhere. Yeah, like right here, I have a texture that I recently had. You could add YouTube videos. I have like some perspective grids. And what makes it really efficient is you can download a plugin for your internet browser. Um, and you just right click an image or right click a link. And I think my hotkey is Z, and it just automatically adds it to Eagle. So when I'm on Instagram, for example, I mean, my Instagram algorithm is all like high fashion and medieval armor. It's kind of crazy, but this has kind of replaced doom scrolling for me. So now I actually kind of look forward to it because it's reference gathering time. It's like, okay, I followed all these accounts that, put these really cool images in front of me and I can just add them to my collection, just like save them, and then next morning or whenever I at my computer next, I can just go in and really quickly add all those references. So this is kind of what I've been doing lately, for the last few months, and I've been finding it like really helpful. So, um, yeah, anybody will tell you that I'm probably the least fashionable person of all time, but I'm kind of obsessed with with high fashion. So, um, it's like a huge source of inspiration. I just find like everything that they're doing is just crazy to me, but makes for really cool character design. Um, so with that being said, I'll bring this to back up here, my other monitor. And then yeah, so I compiled from Eagle. I just went through and I'm like, this is kind of cool. Um, this is cool. This is cool. Like all these things have really unique um like contrast. Like I love the contrast of that paint. This could make for some kind of cool like mask, maybe in 3D. The jewelry here, these lines, these shapes, so I compiled the things that I look cool and I kind of make like a collage out of them within PureRef. And so, maybe like this is kind of something that I want up top here, like maybe some kind of mask. I really like this line for the midsection, maybe. The feet, the shoes. I usually collect like more shoe reference than anything to encourage me to focus on the feet because I always neglect them. But yeah, so that's why I have like so many different shoes and stuff like that. And then I also added some creature. I'm gonna try and do like a few humans and maybe a creature if I can using this method. So I just added some cool colors. Like I love like a blue cat. Like that's so cool. I don't know what that is. This maybe is like a complete contrast to this blue cat, you know? Like this is like gritty and rough, and this is very vibrant and like saturated and glowing. So I don't know. I like that. So maybe there's something there and we can play around with it. So I'm gonna treat this workshop as if it's just me kind of like in my personal time sketching and we'll see where we go from there. So this is actually I just did this as a warm up while I was waiting for this to start. So this is like I'll just really quickly run through it. Started from like a female base mesh and then just did like a quick base layer of what I think like maybe her her some of like the primary forms could look like, and then added maybe some like craziness to it based on some of the reference images, and then I just inflated it and dynameshed it, and yeah, there's something interesting there. I don't know what it is. It kind of just speaks to me. So we're gonna start this process over again, and we'll uh we'll see how it goes. So let's get started. So first thing I should mention is that I've recently compiled I compile all my base meshes into one Z tool, ZBrush tool. Might take a few seconds to load here, but um this is essentially kind of like the early stages of my collection here for base meshes. Anytime I purchase you know, like some kind of human base mesh or maybe a 3D scan of like some pants or something like that, I'm gonna put them in here and categorize them. These base meshes, you definitely don't have to use these, but they're handy for my character art workflow as well. So I also just use them because I have them for concept art. What makes these ones kind of unique, and you can do this on your own too, is these ones are morphable. They have layers, so you can let me just make this a little bit easier actually. See, let's turn off the mail. So there's layers here, so you can see like you can really quickly, uh, give the character some like extra volume, or you can like take away that volume, that mass as well. Couple, I didn't like the default A pose, so I just kind of added my own little unique like A pose. You can make them obviously way more dynamic if you want, but to start, I usually like to work in symmetry. So I just have like a symmetrical power stance layer here. And yeah, so I have the same thing for like male and female. You can use the, I mean, I'll just show you really quick actually. We can bring in like if you don't have a base mesh, you don't want to buy a base mesh, I would just go in and like merge this. So I have that. Maybe hit it with like a slight inflate, like one, like a value, maybe let's try 5. Yeah. Um, Dynamesh it, boom. Like you have something already that's good enough, I think, to work off of. Um, and this is kind of cool, like Ghost in the Shell, like sci-fi. Like you could do a lot with this. So really, like you for this workflow, like you don't need to have anything. If you want to sculpt your own stuff, you can. I actually, if any of you have taken Enzo's his workshop, I haven't had a chance to use them yet, but I mean, if I ever want to do a stylized character, like I got these meshes, so I just went ahead and like added them in here because let's turn that off. So now I have, like just if I ever need to work on like a stylized character, I have these meshes in here that I could just mash with some other base mesh and uh dynamesh it and go from there. So yeah, and I like to just have this all in one tool, one like ZBrush file that I could just open up and hit the ground running and not really have to worry about too much like setup or anything like that. So let's uh let's start with a female character. And how I usually start this is I'm just gonna duplicate this because I might want that mesh later for something else. I'm gonna add it to a folder called concepts. Just make a folder called concepts just so it's separate. And I removed some of the higher subdivision levels on these scans. I think when I got them, they were like um I think like 50 millions like points each. So I deleted the higher ones because for the concepting uh file that I want to have set up, I don't need that much. I'm gonna be dynameshing everything anyways. But I kept it at a level where maybe if I want like a little bit of detail, like a little bit of like skin pores, um, then I have that. So the other thing I should say about these base meshes too is they came with textures. I just baked the texture map as polypaint information onto the character, so I have that set up. Um, I should probably say too, I'm going to be using a lot of like custom like windows and palettes. I've included these. You should have gotten them in my resources. So if you're interested, I have one palette that's, really good for like alpha and brush manipulation, one palette for like color and rendering. And then this is kind of like my general handy little tool belt of like geometry manipulation, Dynamesh, extractions, zero mesher, etc. So, and then this one's for like dynamic subdivision. I don't really use that one too much for this workflow because I'm not really like worried about making anything clean or crisp. It's all like fairly dirty. So. So we have this mesh here. It's kind of organized in its own place. Maybe let's rename it concept one or just whatever. You can name it whatever you want. You can just call it one. So, but yeah, this is concept one. First thing I'm going to do actually, honestly, is I'm just going to turn on MRGB because I don't really want it right now, or I don't really need that skin shader that I had as a default, and I'm just going to give myself something that doesn't really have like um any kind of like bias to it. Like I don't really want to be thinking too much about the skin or and whatnot. So um this does have layers on it. So I have a hotkey, mine's Control Shift B, and that's just going to bake the layers. And then I'm going to just actually go to a lower subdivision, one subdivision level down, and usually around like 500,000 tries, and just delete the lower and delete the higher. And you can find that in geometry, delete lower, delete higher. You can see it's like right here in this palette. So anyways, if you didn't know that, it's there. Um, so yeah, I find like 500,000 tries is generally like a good starting point for this. It kind of gives, at least for this base mesh and this scene scale, like it gives me the just the right amount of detail that I want. As well as like ability to kind of create like a sharper poly paint as we'll see in a sec here. So um just let me look at my reference here. So I'll pull this down. I'll try and work with this. I have a pretty small drawing tablet, so it's a little tricky, but let's see what we can do. Control Shift A, I believe, to keep that on top. Yeah, okay. So I like the I like the white pants. I like the white pants. So let's start with the layer brush. The layer brush might be my favorite brush of all time right now. I feel like I feel like we don't talk about it enough, but I think it's so good. So I'm gonna, by default, the RGB intensity is 0, so we're gonna just crank that up to 100. And for like this base initial layer, um, I'm going to just maybe go like 10, 10, 10 Z intensity. Um, in my palette here, my brush palette, I have backface masking on. That's something that I'll be turning on and off. That's I believe you find that in brush, auto masking, and yeah, backface mask right here. Um, so that's what that's gonna the different basically what that does, if you're not familiar, is without backface masking on. Oh, for some reason, dynamic subdivision is on for her. So let's turn that off. So oh, gotta change the color. That's why. Okay. So yeah, backface masking, what that's gonna do is that's gonna prevent like your sculpting information, your polypaint information from bleeding through to the other side. So if we do that again with backface masking on, you're gonna see like it's a little bit like this back area is kind of untouched, right? So, but for this initial step, I turn that off, go to a pretty low intensity, and I'm just trying at this stage to block in the essentially the primary forms and maybe kind of hint at some of the materials that are being used. I like to, when I'm doing character design, start with the lowest like base layer, like what they might be wearing, like their pants, maybe like a tank top or shirt, that kind of thing. Um, and just really quickly, like I spend almost no time just doing this. I might change to black, kind of get like let's maybe go a little bit darker, get some kind of like top, looks like this maybe. And then maybe let's do like a bold red, something cool like that, right? Like already I'm kind of like liking the contrast there. Um, maybe we will then do a white and kind of hit this trim. I'll change the Z intensity and I like the layer brush. I should probably explain why I like the layer brush. I like the layer brush a lot because I you can really just quickly get like really clean lines as long as you're holding down the brush. Like it's never going to overlap like that, right? Like you're not going to get that, but if you do want to overlap, you can. So I find that it's really handy for blocking out shapes. Let's maybe add some like straps. So like here, like I'm being really loose and I kind of like how this has overlapped here. Maybe we hit it with like inverted. We hold down Alt and use the layer brush and maybe there's like some kind of hinted functionality there already. Um yeah, I should say too that I'm going to be like as I'm going through this process, I'm just going to basically be um sculpting away. So if you have any questions, I think like really any time is a good time to answer them. And I'll kind of explain things as I go as well. I should say too that at this point, I think I've already gone too far, like with this first iteration. Um, like what I would have done normally or what I should have done maybe is right as soon as I had like those primary shapes blocked out, I should have just duplicate it, hide both of them. You can like really quickly swap in between them using the up and down keys. So maybe this, maybe this is kind of the direction that you're going for. So you can kind of like really quickly swap between them and see like your iterative process that way. So, like I already kind of added more detail than I normally would here. And so I'm not stuck with it, but this shape is going to be in my mind and it's going to bleed through to the rest of the designs potentially if I don't like address it right away. So let's actually do that. Let's just hit it with a Dynamesh. For this scale, I usually find that um, somewhere around like 700 is pretty good. Gives me around 500,000 tries again. And let's use the layer brush again and let's just maybe do something completely different. Playing around constantly with the Z intensity here. So maybe here I don't want this to be like as thick of a plate or like padding or whatever. So I will, um, but maybe I want to like increase my intensity again, go over that really quick. This is a very fast process. And a lot of it I've been working on stuff like this, like kind of like the sci-fi, using a lot of these like high fashion shapes that kind of, there's a lot of them that are, similar. So this is kind of over the last few months been kind of like burned into my muscle memory, these shapes. But as you do your own studies, you're going to find that like, um, you know, you're making shapes without even thinking about it. This whole process is kind of designed to get you into a flow state as quick as possible, where you're not really thinking too much about what you're doing. You're just kind of letting your built-in visual library kind of handle, most of the work. As you, like I said, like if as you get further down the line and maybe you decide that you want to like kind of like narrow in on one or two designs at that point, then you can maybe start like detailing and maybe be a little bit more critical with the things that you're doing. So um right there we kind of already have like some kind of base for, I don't know, maybe some kind of, it could be like a faction that you're designing or maybe some kind of like squad of like heroes that you're designing. So um we'll move on from there. We'll duplicate this already. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm already falling behind on like the feet and the um I'm just gonna move this out of the way actually. Um the feet and the hands, like the extremities. So I'm gonna really quickly go to my insert I believe this brush is called Clothing Bash. Yeah, insert Clothing Bash. And I have a few shoes here. I made these shoes because I don't love sculpting shoes. For fun. It's something like I love shoes. Like I love sneaker design. Half my Eagle reference is sneakers and like cool footwear, but that's not something that like I, you know, love kind of sculpting right away. So I'm just going to go ahead and like insert that and Dynamesh it. And because I have color information, it's going to just already, look kind of cool. And maybe we can think about how the shoe connects, right? So maybe we use the layer brush, set it to like a mid-range intensity, and maybe look at some reference here and just kind of go to town, think about, like the ankle supports. Maybe there is some like layering there. It's kind of cool. Um, I really like in this reference board, I don't know what this is. I don't know how practical it is for maybe like some kind of soldier, but again, at this point, I'm just trying to do something cool. The process is a little bit different. Like if you have, you know, a spec that you're trying to hit, maybe you do tone it down just slightly. Um, maybe you save the crazy stuff for kind of the end. Once you have like a more established look, maybe you can add in like a couple interesting elements that maybe you like and that you think would look cool, but maybe not necessarily everybody else would. But you're trying not to be too critical, and like we're artists and we want like our language to show where it can. So just yeah, it's designed to be a process that allows you to have fun and not be too critical, but you can if you need to be. So these are different poly groups. So sometimes I'll just mask this and use my move brush. Because sometimes when you're inserting meshes, I find like if it's a low poly mesh that you've inserted, the move topological brush doesn't always always get it right away. So it's at this stage before you dynamesh, maybe you just like place it into place, that kind of thing. So kind of like the look of that. Um, I love
Andy, mind if
like
I ask a question?
yeah, absolutely.
So like I'm kind of working alongside with you here, playing around on
Yeah.
a concept and everything. And are you like exclusively using the layer brush other than these insert brushes? Because like when I'm using the layer brush, there are some cases where like I'll notice a lot of like jaggies building up, and like yeah, you could use
Hmm.
Dynamesh to kind of help smooth those out a little bit, but like
Yeah, sure.
I don't know, do you use like the trim dynamic or something like that just to kind of dial things back once in a while?
Yeah, definitely. I'll show you like I with the layer brush things do get jagged, like you do get artifacts for sure, like here. I will go through and, oftentimes smooth that. Maybe I'll take the dam standard and kind of like build up maybe more, exactly what I want to kind of get
Right.
like a more specific shape. Um, I use the layer brush mostly to kind of establish indicators for where I want to refine later or what I think might be functionality. So I'm using that to essentially work really fast, create a lot of like happy accidents, but at the same time, think about um, how maybe the different pieces are connecting or maybe there's, some layering and there's creating some artifacts, but maybe that's where like a belt or a pouch might be. Trim dynamic, I don't use it too much at this stage, but I'll use it a lot when I'm creating like for example, I might want to make a helmet. Let's actually use clothing bash. I modeled this really just not great helmet, but it's like a great jumping off point. It's so bad that it makes me want to fix it really quick. Um,
It's
so
almost
I
as
might
good
add
as those
something
shoes.
exactly. So I might take that and like not, leave it with its own polygroup for now. Um, and then start like adding let's go to my hard surface. I've also included this. This is like a hard surface kit bashing brush. I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but kit bashing brush that I created that has like triangular, circular, and square shapes to it. Most of these are kind of built to be like really kit bashable, I should say. And so I'll, maybe take something like this or whatever, and maybe I'll hide that and I'll inflate it. And let's maybe add something with like some volume, like you can enable local symmetry as well. That's something that I learned about way too late, and it's kind of like critical. And maybe just play around with these shapes, and then at this point, I might separate it. My hotkey for that's like Control U, but it's just split unmasked points. If you go into the subtool palette, where is it? Split unmasked points right there. And then I might Dynamesh this. And then here's where I might start like playing around with, like trim
More
dynamic,
planar stuff.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And adding, let's go back to the layer brush. Maybe start with like a black base layer. Maybe we'll give it some like soft plastic material. That should also be included in the resources I
Trim
sent.
dynamics. Trim dynamics, like it's for like rocks and edges and smoothing out edges and stuff. More
Mhm.
for like hard surface kind of stuff.
It's very useful for those. You can use it for uh you can use it for a lot of things. You can use it for folds, even if you're doing like stylized characters, you can use it for uh you could use it for, maybe like getting like angular cheekbones and stuff like that. There's a lot of ways that you can use it. Um But yeah, I think it's used a lot in like hard surface sci-fi design. So I actually hate this shape a lot. It's doing absolutely nothing for me. But maybe we can just like manipulate it into something that we do like. Um, maybe we can add more to it.
Sometimes I like to use like
Maybe
a spiral brush or something, or just like really stretch it out. Sometimes you get something interesting that way.
totally, totally.
Yeah.
It's ZBrush is the reason why I like it is because it allows me to just be very sloppy in the design
Exactly.
stage and not have to worry about breaking anything, right? So, um, I mean, this is weird. I don't love this, but
Dude, it's high
maybe
fashion.
it's high fashion. Exactly. That's the whole
Yeah.
point, right? So, but maybe this is something that like, we can play around with, right? Maybe it's like some kind of cool like torso piece, and we can like Dynamesh that in and use it for um, you know, whatever, right? Like it's maybe what you can do too is if I was doing this in a professional setting, then I'd probably want to make shapes like this. Um, like you could make it like if you know exactly, well, if not exactly, but if you have an idea as to what you want to make, you could make um, you know, a really quick, simple kit bash of like shapes that you like, turn it into a brush in like, 20 minutes and kind of play around with it that way. So, um, for let's work with the shape that we just made actually. So I'm just going to duplicate this character again because that was an iteration. And let's now just merge or yeah, merge it down, right? So now it's one piece and Dynamesh and we'll see where we go from there. Sometimes ZBrush gets a little glitchy. Um I think the beauty too of this stage here, or this process, I should say, is that if I've had ZBrush crash on me so many times doing this stuff, and normally I would like spaz, but I actually don't really care because I feel like in my mind I have an idea of what I'm doing, and I know that I'm just gonna hop in and do another iteration of it. If for some reason I didn't save my work, and it'll be fine. And oftentimes that can actually turn out better. Doing like the second time you do things. So it's
You have you have ZBrush crash with that brush, or is it just in general?
no, I don't really like mean specifically with these brushes, just kind of in general. Yeah, I haven't really since I made these brushes, I haven't really had too much issues. They're pretty simple. The resources I provide are basically just insert mesh brushes and they're pretty low poly, so they shouldn't I think the only risk that you might run into is if you insert them and maybe distort the mesh and that causes some kind of like weird dynamesh that's kind of like janky and broken. And you try to like zero mesh it or something, that might cause a crash. But generally
Yeah.
speaking, no, I haven't really had too many issues with this. So we've kind of neglected the face. The face is very important part of character design, obviously. So let's maybe do that a little bit. I um I have this one. I like to do character like I like starting with closed eyes. I don't know, like they're just kind of melancholy.
Is
So
that
I
11 Smash?
sorry.
Is that 11 from Stranger Things? Kind of look like her.
To be honest with you, I actually haven't watched. I think I've watched one episode of Stranger Things. I'm a little bit behind the times with that, but that's like the psychic little girl, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I can see it for sure. So maybe let's another thing that you can do that I actually learned this technique recently is you can I mean there's probably a faster way to do this, but I'm just going to drag out a cube and I'm going to split unmasked points, select it again, and select rectangle. Oh, wait, yeah, select rectangle. Maybe look at it from the side. Just create like a rectangle like that. Delete the hidden parts. Um, hit it with like a zero mesh. Subdivide it a bunch. Um, I try not to. I know I've gone too far with a mesh in this kind of stage in this workflow when I'm around like a million polygons. Um, the idea is that you want to have a lot of iterations. So if you have 50 characters, 50 designs that are, like a million polygons, and then you have like a 50 million polygon scene, I think, if I did the math correct. So, yeah. So I try to keep things pretty low in terms of ZBrush. Um, so one thing that you could do here, like for example, this eye mask, I'm just going to like draw it out. Actually, yeah, it's more like really quick, not spending a lot of time. Obviously, like it's kind of big for what it is supposed to be. And I'm going to uh hit my hotkey for it is Control W. I think that's the default one, but that's gonna just convert the masked area into its own polygroup. And let's instead of that, let's just invert it, drag it out, and then hit polygroup. That's just a little bit easier, I think. And then I'm going to select that polygroup, del delete the lower subdivisions, delete hidden, close the holes. Oh, sometimes Dynamesh does some weird things, especially when you have like these really long holes. This might crash my ZBrush, but we'll find out here. Yeah. I'm going to just quickly read through some of the comments while I wait for ZBrush to not crash. Yeah, if anybody has any other questions at all, please feel free to jump in and happy to talk about it. We'll probably do a few more iterations. I want to make like maybe a slightly beefier version of this character and maybe something more I don't know, mystically archetypical. And then we'll probably jump into doing some kind of creature around the halfway point. So
Oh, there it goes.
I'm gonna give it one more minute, and if it doesn't work, then I'm just gonna restart. Because yeah, it's fine. We kind of have an idea already. I mean, what you could do too, also, and this probably is a good idea, is I do this often, is I'll take like a screenshot, just a quick like screenshot of every iteration as I go. So at least at the very least, if it does crash, even if you're starting from scratch again, kind of designing something, you at least have that to reference or to show somebody like a client potentially. So yeah, let's just close it down. Start it back
I
up.
have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, like concepting when do you pre-plan ahead of time or do you go in there and just kind of pull at the clay and the whole, in hopes you get something cool, or do you go in with like
hmm
an idea that you're going to do a creature and then turns out it could turn
Yeah.
out to be a robot or something like that, it's all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, that happens all the time, especially for personal work. Like my personal projects, I will start thinking I'm going to do one thing and I'll collect reference based on that thing. And then, an hour or two down the line, I've realized that I actually like the look of this thing better. For my personal work, you know, I have a like a 7-month-old and I don't have a lot of free time anymore. So if I'm going to be doing like a full character art piece, then I want to make sure that I love what I'm going to be working on because I have too many, half finished projects that I've just kind of like gotten bored of. So I really that's kind of why I started doing this process too, is to make sure that I have something that really cool that I like to work on. And so I might think I have an idea as to what I'm going to want to work on, but you know, especially for personal work, and for portfolio, you might end up with something completely different. It's kind of been my experience with it. So, okay. Well,
Just a quick question.
yeah.
When you're doing like when you're adding some mass to the character before, sometimes you're just drawing on the base mesh, and then other times you're like making new objects and stuff like that. Uh,
hmm
when how do you really know the sort of best way to go about it, or like, getting used to, okay, yeah, this I'm gonna have to do this way compared to the other way?
That's a good question. Usually I think it kind of depends on the archetype that I'm doing. If it's a character that's going to be, more sleek, agile, dexterous, I might, and I know they're probably going to be wearing something that's a little bit more skin tight and like, versatile in that way. I might not add like a lot of base meshes to it. I might just kind of use a layer brush to kind of hint that maybe they're wearing some kind of like leggings or something like that, or even if they're wearing like tighter jeans, then I might do it that way and then just kind of add some like fold indications really quickly. But if it's something that's going to be beefier, like maybe for this character, maybe we'll take some of the same reference and we'll make something, maybe a little bit more sturdy, like a tank or something like that. And actually, we'll use this female base mesh just to stay consistent. But yeah, so if it's usually it kind of depends on the archetype that I'm going to be going for. So yeah, if it's like a bulkier character, maybe I want them to look more strong and intimidating, imposing, then I'll really quickly add in some, shapes that might lend itself to that kind of character feel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you.
Okay. Let's call this folder concepts take two, because I feel like I should finish demonstrating that though, what I was doing there. But the idea is essentially you can quickly mask out a shape and dynamesh it, and then you already have like something that you can work with that has volume. That's kind of the idea. That's what I was going to do with the mask. We'll maybe do that again once we get to that process with this character. So once again, I'm just going to bake down the layers. My hotkey for that's Control Shift B. You can find that layers bake all. This is kind of like the pose that I usually like to start working with. Um, and then I will, yeah, go to about 500 million. That's like my third subdivision for this base mesh, and delete all the other subdivisions. Just the reason why I like to delete all the subdivisions is because when you go to add an insert mesh to, something that has subdivisions, you get this error, right? Like you can't do it. You have to, it's composed of multiple subdivision levels. That kind of, that has at times taken me out of a flow state when I'm working on a character. So if I ever run into that issue, then I just delete my subdivisions when I'm just doing early concept design. Um, so let's try it again. Let's start all over and let's maybe make this character a little bit more imposing. So once again, I'm gonna just change my material or set my brush to MRGB. So that's gonna give me material information as well as like color information. And then let's go look at a reference again. Maybe let's try inverting the colors maybe. Let's see how that goes. I think I saved the subtool with dynamic subdivision on. It's pretty annoying. I'm gonna have to do that again. But so yeah, backface mask is not on. Just some like really quick brush strokes along the back. Just kind of looking for happy accidents, just going back to the question about these artifacts with the layer brush, like this here, this could be something to me. Maybe I go back and that is a shape. Do you know what I mean? Maybe this is a shape. maybe this is a shape. I just find that there's a lot of cool things that you can find in kind of like the chaotic nature of the layer brush. Um, so that's kind of what I was trying to explain a little bit earlier there. So maybe if it's a tank or some kind of like sturdy character, maybe the midsection isn't exposed, like in that reference that we're looking at. So maybe we will instead go through and let's maybe hmm. I made this insert brush because I really also don't like modeling collars. I don't like the bend, like trying to get that fold to look good in ZBrush. So I just made that so it's like a really quick and dirty way to do it. Maybe
Are all
let's
all the brushes that you're showcasing, like the insert brushes, part of the pack,
mhm.
or okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Yeah, the brushes that I included, the insert meshes ones are the AT clothing bash, hard surface shapes, and then the bodybuilder, which we'll get to for the creature. I've also
Awesome.
included a couple other brushes that you'll be able to find. This one I love. It's Seams '01, and this is a cool one. It works really well too with mRGB. This like for here, I might go through and I might just like add in some cool like cut lines just to kind of indicate it maybe where seams in the fabric are, or you could even use them as like maybe turn off RGB and use them as maybe some kind of like indicator that there's like a connection there. So that's another one that I use. I'll just kind of run through some of these right now, actually. There's a skin detail one that's just like a general noise that I use. Sometimes especially for creatures, maybe at the end, just to give it like a final touch, I'll just like add in some like rough skin noise. Um, there's also skin buildup, which is cool. Skin buildup, essentially, I like to play a lot with the tiling, like vertical and horizontal tiles when I'm sculpting, especially skin. I find that it can give me like a lot of really cool like random noise effects and overlap. And so what I did was I actually just took like the gradient alpha, which is in the alpha kit here, alpha 27 here, and I just duplicated that and like in Photoshop and squished them together, and then I get something kind of like this that I like to maybe use for, well, here let's do it actually. You can use it for, maybe making some kind of like fabric or something, or you can crank the intensity really high and maybe do some like rib cage armor or something like that. So that's those are some of the brushes that I've included, and we'll kind of go over more of these as well. So okay, so going back to this, let's uh let's change our let's go to the concept material. I really like to play around too with the materials as well. It can be kind of scary because there's a good chance that you're going to be dynameshing your character, your sculpt, and you might lose like all that um nice material information that you've kind of painted on. My thought process behind that is that if you're going to dynamesh, then you should just duplicate your mesh, and that's like another iteration. But also, if you're going to keep the RGB, the color, the polypaint information, and so you'll still have that as indicators. And the idea is that like even if you lose the material information, you're still probably going to have an idea as to like where you're going, and you're going to have like indicators for that. So going back to the design, let's maybe make this character a little bit more sturdy looking, play around with RGB and the layer brush. Some like one of my shortcuts is if maybe I want the character to look a little bit, if they have a little bit more volume, I will just drag in like this pants insert mesh, and I'll just scale that and adjust it, tweak it. Again, like there's weird artifacts here you can see, but we don't care. maybe maybe there's some clipping even when you Dynamesh it, but that could just be like another design cue. Is kind of my uh, perspective. So bring that down. You can actually, I actually love using the pants for. I see this shape a lot in like high fashion, but it's kind of like this weird, just like shoulder cloak type shape that kind of just like frames like the bust. And I always find that really interesting. So maybe we can add that there. Um, I should say too, like uh anatomy is like obviously really important. It's something that you should always be studying and trying to get better at. But when I'm designing, I'm not trying to think about anatomy too much other than like the proportions of the character underneath. I'm, I'm not trying to like sculpt I'm not trying to make like a portfolio piece for anatomy. I'm trying to make like a cool character design. And so I'm not really dedicating any time to like, sculpting like a human body to then do this stuff over top of. It's all very designed to kind of just get you in the mindset of finding like interesting shapes as soon as possible. So, um, at this stage too, well, let's go back. See, I'm gonna lose all my material information here, so let's just duplicate this. Hide both of them. Um, and what we can do here is Dynamesh, and then I love using the curve multi-tube brush. If you go into I also found this ZBrush setting way too late, but if you go into the depth panel up here, or sorry, the picker panel, and then the depth menu, um, 1Z and continuous Z are like phenomenal options to kind of switch between. And I like to do this to create, just some really quick, like add some really quick volume to the character. Um, Maybe there's some kind of like let's go like some kind of shoulder armor or scapula armor or something. Maybe there's some kind of like hip padding. Um, so that's with continuous Z, because continuous Z, essentially the curve is going to follow the shape of the mesh and it's going to stick to it. If you just go one Z, then you're going to get something different, right? It's going to take the first point of your curve and it's going to create like a straight line from there. So they both have like really awesome functionality. It's just kind of knowing when to use it. So for me, when I'm kind of stuck on something, I will take this brush and just kind of go to town with it. Usually with continuous Z turned on. Maybe I should also say too that I'm using C as the hotkey. I believe that's standard to color pick. So I'm always constantly like picking like that red, picking that black or whatever, just kind of like switching back and forth and then filling the object as I go. Um,
Are you thinking
Maybe
about functionality at all, or are you doing the same with the anatomy and just functionality out the window?
yeah, functionality is important. I'm guilty of thinking about form way more than functionality. Um, I like to make something that looks cool before I think about how it works. I've never had like a rigger get mad at me for the sculpts that I've made before, so I mean, they may tell me to make an adjustment or two to like tweak or maybe break apart like a piece so it, rotates better, especially around like the arms and stuff. Um, but at this stage, this really early stage, this is just a thumbnail. We're just trying to essentially find out if this looks good. I should have brought that up earlier, but this is a really handy shader that it's free. You can find it on, his name's George. I think it's pronounced Eubler. He has that and this material and like his UI. You can download that off his Gumroad. And this is just a really handy shader that I'm always switching back and forth just to try and see if it looks cool. Like you can even you know, play around with uh you know, like pushing and pulling without even knowing what you're exactly doing, just to kind of find something that looks good. So to answer your question, you do need to think about functionality. At this stage, though, it's it's not necessarily what I'm thinking about. If I at the end of this process, you know, if you have say like 5 to 10 thumbnails, I would probably do a pass where I go back through with the layer brush and or any brush really. You can do it with whatever. And I would start, you know, breaking down like what are these pieces. So like maybe this piece here, you know, maybe there's like a cut here or some kind of like transition there. Maybe it, you know, swoops up there. Um, you know, this piece is kind of awkward. Maybe this is somewhere where I need to like spend a little bit more time refining the concept. I don't use this often, but you can also, you know, go through and like use Sculptress and like if there's an area that you really want to kind of like draw attention to. Um, my hotkey for it is the backslash. I think that might be the stock hotkey for it. I'm not 100% sure, but you know, maybe around the face or maybe like in a complicated area that you kind of want to break down further, it might be worth it to kind of go through and use Sculptress and just get a little bit more detail there, right? So, like maybe this is some kind of like maybe this area is a little bit awkward, so maybe we can it's like clipping into her like torso, so maybe we can, you know, hollow that out a little bit more, go back, like just kind of indicate that maybe like that's her undergarment there, and then her armor is like maybe there's a little bit more space there for her to kind of have like a range of motion. So, yeah, uh, thinking about like really cool shapes, first for me, because that's what I like to do, especially during my for my personal work. But functionality is critical, especially if you're planning on taking this character, you know, down the line. If you want to have it like rigged or animated, then yes, like absolutely you should. And also for world building too, like you do want to think about you know, what exactly is this character doing? Like what are the story elements that we can add to it? Like what going back to the archetype, like what is this character? What's her archetype? What does she do like on a daily basis? Like how does she wake up? How does she, you know, get to work, etc. Right? So these are things that you can also imply in the character design process. But for for prototyping and thumbnailing for this stage, I'm just trying to find something going back to kind of like the 2D silhouette drawings. I'm just trying to find something that looks cool right away that maybe hints at functionality, if that makes sense. I'm not super ultra focused at this point in you know, generating something that I think is gonna um necessarily be like uh yeah, like rigged or animated right away. So just gonna turn Sculptress off again. This is kind of crazy. Let's maybe go back to that brush. Maybe we can add some, you know, this is one of my favorite insert brushes. It's can be kind of versatile. It's kind of like a just like a tube that looks like muscle fibers, almost like you can use it for biceps or you can use it for cables. Just kind of splash around where you see fit. And you see I've completely neglected the shoes and the clubs again. So let's spend some time giving those attention as I immediately avoid trying to give them attention. But maybe, you know, this character, if we're trying to make her like sturdy, intimidating, imposing, maybe we can show some strength like in her gloves. So maybe let's just go back to like our Kit Bash set, maybe find a shape that kind of is more sturdy looking, like square or triangular maybe. I like this actually. This brush or this mesh kind of works for a lot of things. Let's try that. Don't crash. Um, make sure local symmetry is turned on so you have an easier time adjusting these things at their individual origins. you can also really quickly hold control and drag your move the brush, and that's gonna like essentially clone it. And so that's like a really quick way to, maybe get some rhythm and repetition like in your design. You're kind of also thinking about you know, the term that I've heard used and that I tend to use is layer caking. So trying to find, or big, medium, small. So trying to find, if you have like one shape here, maybe, the let's just auto groups, unhide, mirror, and weld. So now these are all in their own polygroups. Maybe you take that one and you like, oh, and you adjust it slightly, So that might look a little bit more interesting than just having three kind of side by side. Maybe this one has like some kind of protrusion. Maybe this one is kind of inverted. And I'm using the move topological brush to, while these are still in their own polygroups, to like manipulate these without manipulating the underlying surface. So like at this stage, even here, I think it's just worth duplicating because why not? This will allow you to just be more flexible. Like you can just immediately go through and Dynamesh that again, but you still have those in their own polygroups if you want to go back to them. And you can, oops, play around again with the layer brush and just kind of go through and maybe add some shapes. Maybe hit it with the dam standard as well, inverted to kind of get some kind of cool, I don't know, like spine looking shape. You can use like the trim, like going back to what we talked about before, use the trim dynamic, kind of flatten those out. I actually don't love that, so I'm just gonna undo it. But I should say too, one of my favorite brushes of all time is the Geo Softforms brush, and this is made by Pablo. It's like a game changer. So I think that's free on his website. If I'm not mistaken, it's still free up there. But yeah, it's I rarely use Dam Standard now that I have this, so it just kind of gives like a softer form, I guess, to like the depth, or like a softer bevel, I should say. So um let's I'm not actually loving these like white pants that we got here, so let's just go through and like switch it up. Super messy, just kind of playing around with shapes. There's some weird artifacting here from the Dynamesh. If you run into holes like that, you can just inflate them and like re-Dynamesh, and that should fix them. You might have to do it a few times. Um, but maybe there's maybe there's some like butt padding or something here. Um, maybe there's some we can add some like accents kind of going down to kind of carry that red through. Maybe it like overlaps here, and you can bring in the Geo brush or the Dam Standard and kind of just create some like ripples. And then this is kind of like what I'm really guilty of is I will routinely, and I'm trying to break away from this actually because I do it way too much, but I will take that insert curve multi-tube brush and I will just add way too many, just like little things like this. Maybe change the pivot point of that, and like going back to like practicality and like functionality, like this is obviously not the most functional thing to have protruding from your elbows, but at this stage, I think it looks cool, and maybe we can like find some kind of like functionality for it down the road. So let's go add maybe that kind of like that cool with the layer brush again. We'll add that cool white circle that was kind of carrying through. If you want to show skin after you've kind of hit it with the layer brush, I like to just color pick the skin, um, and then just slightly lower like my RGB. So maybe for here it's like, oh, and my intensity. And you can kind of just do like a soft, like, I don't know, maybe through like nylon or whatever, you can kind of just get some like almost translucency that way, which is kind of cool. I also recently I've kind of for tattoos, I'll drop that intensity down to like 0 and I'll crank the RGB up and it kind of just gives like a weird effect. It's not anything special by any means, but I don't know, it just kind of gives me some cool noise that I can like kind of work with, and again, just try and find some interesting, shape language in there. So, let's maybe I like this circle. I feel like that could be replicated again, so maybe um let's try and mimic that maybe in the face and create like a focal point. Um, Go to some kind of like off-white maybe. Maybe we can, bring the dam standard out and start creating some kind of hints at maybe what a helmet could look like or some kind of mask. So just by making those few shapes there, I'm already starting to picture, something kind of like this going through and something like that. Maybe we can, adjust that to kind of like echo the nose a little bit. We can think about like these 2 points here. Maybe there's like a third point that we can kind of bring up here or maybe down here or something, or maybe right here. So trying to think about again, like kind of like that layer caking or big, medium, small, just 3 different shapes that kind of resemble each other, but maybe they're slightly different than each other. Some of these insert mesh brushes that I made, the walls on them are kind of thin, like the shell. It's kind of like a thin shell, so sometimes I find that I might have to go through and hit the edges with an inflate. Otherwise, you get artifacts like this. So I'll do that. Dynamesh, and again, like just kind of play off what I'm seeing there. It's not necessarily what I anticipated, but you're just kind of always looking for opportunities to, um, find some kind of like cool designs and like even your mistakes, right? So, um, let's maybe add some kind of belt. I think I might actually let's check the silhouette first. So we can go through and maybe give it like a 3/4 look. It's not the most interesting thing, to be honest with you. It can be refined. I think there's like a lot of straight edges here. This character to me is reading as more aggressive than sturdy. So I think we might want to do another iteration and kind of go back and, I mean, maybe this will work as like a more aggressive character design in this faction. Maybe, it almost kind of gives almost like a rogue or something. So, but yeah, anyway, so we can maybe use that for later. So let's just actually duplicate it again. But before that, let's kind of see where we're at. So if I switch, um, I'll just apply this material again. So if this is like where we started, this is kind of like the evolution of it. So, and I'll just switch back to my concepts. And this is also what I like too about this kind of workflow with working with one subtool is maybe for this character here, I really like I like this part. Or maybe let's say select lasso. Let's go there, actually. Maybe I like this part. So I can just duplicate that, delete hidden, and then maybe I want to bring it just back onto like our base. Or maybe let me quickly load up another file here and just get like really crazy with some stuff. Give me 1 second here. I had these all open, but then my ZBrush crashed, so
Andy, sometimes when you're looking at the silhouette of your character, and you're
Yeah.
like trying to determine if it's interesting or not, do you ever just work with the silhouette, just like pushing and pulling some stuff to try and like make it a little bit more interesting, or do you just go right back to like the normal view and try to make it work that way?
Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah, I will do that a lot actually. I'll work just in the silhouette view, especially with insert meshes, and the move brushes. So
Mhm.
I'll like, pull out maybe along like the sleeves if I want some more like aggressive patterns, I might pull out like some triangles or something like that just to kind of indicate that there's spikes there. Or if I want to just add like immediate bulk, then I might just, drop in some sphere meshes like on the shoulders or some square meshes on the I should say some cube meshes on the like on the legs or whatever. That's something that I do all the time, yeah, for sure. Especially like early on, just to kind of get a start on the archetype.
Yeah, so then
But
you get your silhouette going that way, but then you have to go back to the normal view, and now you're looking at all these random shapes that you just dropped in on your guy, and you got to make it work, right?
yeah, exactly. And like I feel like that's kind of what's exciting for me is making these weird shapes and kind of just not limiting myself, but then trying to find the design within those shapes. That's the kind of stuff that like really makes me excited to like do 3D art. So yeah, that's definitely like an opportunity. It's kind of like a drastic, like if I'm really stuck too, I'll do that. You know, I'm was actually pretty close to doing that for her. So if I'm really
That
stuck
would
on
have
a
been
character, then
interesting to
yeah, I'll
see,
do it.
though.
Yeah, well, maybe we can try it. So
Yeah,
like for this character, here, let's just hide that, or maybe I'll just maybe I like this guy's pants or something. Okay, so I duplicated it, so I still have that information. I'm just gonna, just for the sake of not having an absolutely brutal Dynamesh, I'm going to like clean up some of like the floating pieces, um, and then delete the hidden. And my hotkey is Control Shift C, I believe, for copying subtool, and then Control Shift P. And let's see how this works. Which mesh here is giving me this? Let's go back. Let's just change all the materials again on these characters. Um, let's maybe let's duplicate our first mesh, and I'm just gonna hold Shift and press this button, and then essentially this is gonna move the it outside of the folder to the very bottom. And I'm just gonna create a new folder and just call that like merged for now, just to kind of keep things a little bit organized. And then I'm going to do the same with this, drop that into that folder, and let's go with this one, duplicate it, drop that, bring that up there. And you can even just merge the folder if you want. And that should show up here. You can bring that back up to your concepts so you have that kind of like organized. And right there, I mean, let's see, let's just like turn on symmetry and just move this. I mean, this is kind of crazy. Let's close the holes. This might break ZBrush. Let's find out. And let's try Dynamesh. We're gonna lose like this material information, but we're still gonna have the color information. Let's change the resolution. I mean, sometimes like if you're really stuck, um, like you can just do like a really low resolution and just kind of start working again from scratch. Sometimes too, because like the idea with thumbnailing is that you want to come up with as many ideas as possible, and it can be dangerous to kind of just constantly be stuck in the same like iterative cycle where you're working on the same shape language. Um, this technique is like really useful for coming up with like characters that kind of belong in the same world, I find. But sometimes you might want characters to look completely different than each other in terms of proportion or like what they're wearing. And so it could be a good idea just to start from scratch, either from a new base mesh or just like completely like dynameshing like this. So, but in this case, let's just kind of bring that in. And I mean, I kind of like what's going on already with that. It's you can see the fingers they've dynameshed within. the pants, so we can't, separate those. We can't like move those. But honestly, that's fine. If you're gonna take this further, then you can pretty quickly clean that up. It's really it's not a big deal. You're just trying to make sure that you're not. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not focusing too much on that because I could get stuck in like a bit of a spiral trying to clean that up, and then like 20-30 minutes has passed and then I'm kind of out of like the flow state that I was in designing the characters. So um but I kind of like this, so let's maybe find some functionality there. Like maybe these are overalls, and maybe they are like mechanical. And maybe they are actually like somehow attached to her uh like shoulder blades, and maybe there's some kind of like mechanism in there that can like pull the pants up and down or whatever. Like maybe if she's like walking through um like deep water or something like that, or I don't know. Like these are just kind of the questions that like I'm kind of constantly asking myself as I'm thinking about these things. Um as I'm starting to get to the process where I'm not so much just worried about the primary shapes and kind of like the initial read. Um And so let's maybe like try and blend this in a little bit more. I'm looking at the time, and I think it's almost been an hour and a half. So maybe I'll wrap this design up, and then we'll kind of maybe move on to some kind of like creature, and I'll just demonstrate some of the techniques I do to kind of um yeah, some of the techniques that I do that are like similar to this process, but focus more on like less costume design and more like creatures and stuff like that. So yeah, just kind of going back and adding some shapes. Let's say like I'm not like a huge fan of this design, right? Like it's kind of a mishmash of things. But I think there's opportunities there to make something cool if I maybe continue iterating on it, which like I don't have the time for, like in this workshop, we don't have the time to do that right now. But if I were to move it on to another stage, onto the next stage, what I would do is I'd probably take like my 2 or 3 favorite ones and I would give them some kind of like alpha or VDM pass just very quickly. Um, some of my favorite brushes are I we should be able to maybe put a link to them in the chat, but they're virtual displacement map brushes. I think I got a pack of 3 of these that have, I think there's like 100 of them in total between 3 brushes, and they just have like all the the details I need. So you might want to, at this stage, like if you like one of them, then maybe you do subdivide it like once or twice. So now we're at like 2 million like tries. So maybe we can, get a little bit more information there. Um, Kind of start going through and you know, breaking down exactly like what these shapes are and maybe some of their functionality and like how they connect in a way that's maybe a little bit more detailed. Um, so yeah, I mean, this is I tend to not spend more than like when I'm when I'm just working solo, I tend to not spend more than 10 minutes on one of these characters, like thumbnails. You can even set like a timer if that's helpful to kind of switch off. Um, I should also say, usually this is kind of insane, but like when I'm uh when I'm doing this kind of work, purely kind of explorative, I'm oftentimes just listening. My wife thinks I'm insane for this, but I'll listen to like the same like anime opening on loop for like 2 hours. Or like whatever it is, like that gets me kind of like in the mindset or mentality to design for that kind of genre or style. So I might be listening to like some kind of like fantasy music, or if I'm working on like cyberpunk stuff, that I'm listening to like the cyberpunk I can't remember the name of the song off the top of my head, but I was listening to that song on repeat like way too much. So um maybe you could do another quick 10-minute one to show us how you get into the flow state. Sure, yeah, let's do that and then we'll take a quick break. So, let's just duplicate the male body here. We'll bring that down, put it in concepts. We'll hide everything else. And let's get started. So again, just going to Control Shift B to bake down my layers and then remove the subdivisions. In here, if you like create a file like this for yourself, then you can just have like one subtool without subdivisions to kind of eliminate that step. But for me, I just find it kind of helpful to have that. So yeah, so I'm not even gonna look at reference this one. I'm just gonna kind of just do whatever. And yeah, we'll set a timer for 10 minutes and we'll see kind of like how far we get here. So um maybe this guy is like I love using the inflate brush too, I should say. Like I'm a huge fan of it. Just kind of like adding in just a lot of like weird, like I love like whatever's going on here. Love it. Um let's maybe Dynamesh. Don't even worry about the face. Like if you don't have those details, it's like just add in whatever. Maybe this is kind of like a bruiser type character. Maybe he's a fighter and he's got like, you know, those fighter muscles, like the ones that I don't have. Uh, maybe just add some, let's go again with the layer brush. Maybe just add some kind of like shoulder pads. Maybe there's like a strap kind of going off here. You're gonna, like, as you do this process, you're gonna just find your own strokes that like work really well for you. And yeah, you're gonna get into a rhythm like pretty quick with it. Obviously, I think the danger there is that your stuff, starts to look maybe a little bit too much like they belong in the same world. And that's where like a good reset of just going through and doing this process and like studying some specific shapes and just kind of like warming up your muscles to be familiar with those shapes will help you a lot. So like for my personal work, I'm doing a lot of like sci-fi stuff right now. So um, a lot of my shapes kind of like are referencing, like more sci-fi shapes, like a lot of curves and um, like panel lines, straps, just things that you would expect to see in like maybe like a cyberpunk world or something like that. But if I was doing like a fantasy character, it might look a little bit different. And I might need like a few hours to kind of warm my muscles back up and get my head into a space where like I'm you know uh those are coming more naturally, I should say. So let's lower the intensity. I'm not gonna forget the boots this time. Let's give him some like big shoes. Like if you guys ever watched Tonka Heroes or something like that, like just something ridiculous. And like these are ridiculous, kind of, but also I feel like you see big shoes a lot now. So maybe they do work. Like in a lot of the high fashion reference that I have, there's just absolutely insane shoes. And I'm like, how do you walk in those? But um yeah, I don't know. It's really cool. It's cool stuff. Let's Dynamesh it. For this guy, maybe we want him to have I don't know, let's say like combat pants or something like that. Like fatigues, like I'm not even sure what the material is that they're made out of, to be honest, but something that's kind of looks like it's form fitting, but it's not too loose or not too tight. So I usually, for me personally, it's just my preference. I will lower my focal shift quite a bit and like raise my intensity. And I'm just going to like really quick. You could spend hours sculpting folds, but I find like for this stage, just doing a couple like zigzags where it makes sense and like drawing in some triangles and kind of like, blending them together. I mean, that's not great, but it's you know, I think it like sells the idea enough to where, that took 20 seconds. You can also, if you want, you can use like an alpha to like replicate that stuff. But for me, personally, I don't like to have like a ton of alphas in my like alpha bar, and I don't like to really zoom through or like scroll through the uh like the Z palettes and the ZBrush menu. So this is just the way that I found that kind of like works for me. That's like pretty quick. So let's see, it's been I think 5 minutes already, and we kind of just have like some kind of idea. Maybe he's got some gloves. Maybe he has like a finger exposed. Like these fingers when they dynamesh, they're gonna be, or they are dynamesh and they're completely stuck together. Again, that's something that like if you want to carry it further, you can for sure. You can polish it. You can also, if you're presenting this and you want to like present the functionality or maybe the materials, you can do like an individual prop call out or a call out for, like an aspect of your character. So like maybe you can like go into Sculptress or whatever and detail out this maybe leather like chest plate kind of thing. And you can show reference images of like for a 3D character artist, like this is what this looks like, so it doesn't necessarily have to be like perfect. A lot of the concept art that I get like in my professional work is, a lot of it's indicators as well. Like you have to kind of figure out what a paint stroke means sometimes, right? So it's doesn't you don't necessarily have to I don't think that you necessarily have to have everything 100% detailed, and I think you can just kind of think about it as if it's like a painting in a way. Um, Maybe let's smooth this out and like add some kind of seams, just kind of indicate where maybe the fabric is connecting with each other. Like this is something that, if you want to polish later, you can go through and you can, mask it off, um, and extract it or like polygroup it, right? And then you can do a lot with that. Um, you can, make it like a high subdivision thing and like really go to town detailing it. So it's really flexible. And I think, yeah, I wanted to share this because it's kind of, when I'm working on stuff, I think we're all kind of like this. I really get stuck in my own head and I will spend way too long on something that I don't like because I feel like I have to finish it. And so for me, this was kind of my solution to just exploring a lot of ideas really quickly and not feeling like they have to necessarily be perfect all the time. But, you know, maybe you do find that one idea within there that you love and then you can kind of like move on from there. So um, maybe he's got some pockets, maybe he's got like some cool like I don't know, like Adidas pants or something like that. Yeah. So I think it's almost been about 10 minutes. That's kind of like, this would be, I mean, his shoes are crazy. I never really addressed those, but let's actually really quickly do that. Let's really quickly address those shoes. Let's maybe, hmm, let's maybe bring those in a little bit, make them a little bit pointier and kind of like blend them in a little bit better. Like maybe if there's shoes that are that heavy, maybe they actually are somehow, at like rigged up to like his body or something. Like he's got some kind of, you know, maybe let's make this a slightly different color. Or let's make it metal actually. Whoops. RGB. Yeah, maybe he's got like some kind of like rigged up shoes that he uses. Maybe they're magnets and he uses them to like walk on buildings or something, Artifact there, no big deal. Just inflate it and Dynamesh. And yes, again, we lost our material information, but it's fine because like we still know what it is when we go into the next iteration. So that's probably as far as I'll take like this character here. I think what we'll do is we'll try and make like some kind of creature that blends in maybe with I don't know, like this one or something like that, or maybe I'll just start from scratch, but Maybe I'll just quickly scroll through the chat and answer a few questions, and then if anybody else has any questions, now would be a good time, and then we can take a quick break, maybe in like 10 minutes or something like that. In a few minutes. Listening to Chrono Cross a lot of the time, that's a great idea. Yeah, sure. I can go through the materials really quick. I believe the ones that I included are I have a skin shader, and that's kind of what I use to kind of like get this look. And so, if I didn't do a lot of if any skin's exposed, then maybe and it's like a final piece that I want to present, then I might go through and like paint that on it just to kind of get that like noise that you get with this skin shader. Um, let's kind of play with them here. Yeah, like this is what that looks like. Concept is just it's like a really flat material, and this is what I do most of my sculpting in. Let's bring out the layer brush again, and I'll just play with the materials here. So yeah, this is what I do most of my sculpting in. It's purely preference, I think, but I don't know, it just looks good to me. So I use that for most of it. If I'm doing, maybe some spot that's like a little bit shinier, or if I'm working on like a creature, then maybe I use Concept Specular, which is just the same, but it has specular information as well. So you can get some like cool shine on it as well. I believe I included two metal shaders. These are just like what they say. They're just like metal. This is what I'll usually, a lot of the stuff that I've been doing recently, I'll just add like a quick metal pass and just kind of like pick out like little ornaments like you can see on this guy. Like at the end of it, I just, went through with this like gold color here and just went through and like added, like blop, 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 just a little couple, little spots like that, just to kind of give it some more contrast and again to kind of like hint at like what the materials are. Um, Soft plastic, that's the kind of stuff that I'm going to use. I think I used it maybe on this helmet, but it's just kind of yeah, I think I did, yeah. So it's just kind of I use this for like it's called soft plastic, but I use it for maybe rubber or slightly matted like hard shell things like military helmets like Kevlar, that kind of thing. Leather, I'll use that if I decide to let's go here, like I have this pouch here, it's kind of versatile. Oh, I already did one here actually. Let's add one down here. Color pick that, and that just kind of gives me a cool leather shader or leather look to that mesh like right away. Um, whoops. Oh, I just subdivided the wrong subtool. And I like this because it has like specular as well. And I think I included, maybe I didn't include this one, but it's pretty generic anyways. I just have like an alpha brush that I use to like apply alphas. And it by default it's set to leather. So yeah, I just kind of like the look that it gives me for just adding like really quick.
Hey, Andy.
So yeah.
How long do you generally spend in the blockout phase? Like how do you have like a limit that you'll hit and you'll be like, okay, I don't like it, I'm gonna scratch it.
Um, for this stage, like for concepting and just character design and like any kind of like design work, it's really quick. Like it's usually no more than 5 to 10 minutes before I know if I kind of like it or not. If I'm doing professional like character art, then I spend a lot more time in the blockout stage to make sure that everything is kind of matching the concept art that I've been given for work. But for concept art, um, yeah, generally it's like 5 to 10 minutes. But if I do like a shape a lot, then I might continue on and like continue expanding that. So it's pretty flexible, but usually I would say somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes. That's a good question. So when you show it to your clients, you do a paint over and add details, or do you refine it further and render it? What does the final concept look like? So yeah, it kind of depends. Like I'm not a professional concept artist, I would say. Like I don't do a lot of like I'm a character artist, but I do concept art within that, if that makes sense. Like I do get to do, I have the privilege of being able to design a lot of cool things. But for this stage, it totally depends. You can go the route of, and like the extra mile, which is like push your character basically to the point where it is like a full like riggable, animatable character and do like beautiful renders with like textures and whatnot. Um, or, I mean, for this stage, like if I was to push this further, I would probably like this stage would be fine, I think, for presenting. I would take this into Photoshop and I would just maybe like overpaint it a little bit. Um, you can also play with some cool filters in Photoshop and Krita that allow you to like they'll just find kind of the edges and turn it into like a cool line art type thing. So you can kind of fake like a 2D look if you want. You would, in some cases you would probably want to like maybe break off the arms so you can kind of show it in like an orthographic view without the arms getting in the way. Um, but for this stage, like this very quick stage, I would say generally, yeah, this is this would be good enough for me. I'd feel comfortable showing this to a client because I feel like they'd be able to kind of get a sense as to what the materials are, the proportion, the archetype, maybe some of the functionality as well. And we can kind of go from there. And if they wanted, something more polished, then I can go back and, break the mesh apart and kind of do stuff like that. And Benji is bringing up a good point. NPR filters would work wonders with these. Yeah, absolutely. Like NPR filters are really good. Pablo has a bunch of really good ones on his website. I recommend checking them out. Um, but yeah, that's definitely an option too. So
Uh, One more question. If you didn't like the color of all that blue, would you just take it into Photoshop and do just a gradient or something? Or is there a quick way that you can just swap that blue out for something in ZBrush?
yeah, that's what I did with this guy here. So when I first started off with this character, I did let me just hide these meshes. Right here. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, this is like the first iteration that I did. And I like the orange. I was kind of going for like some kind of like bruiser hazmat cyberpunk type look. But then I duplicated it to make another iteration. And then I went into polypaint and adjust colors. And then from there, I color picked the orange like that. And then I just changed the hue. And boom, like it was as
Cool, I've
easy as
never
that. So
never knew you could even do that.
yeah, it's really nice for coming up. Like if you have like a final design, you can or if you have a design that you want to present and polish more, then you can make a couple really quick iterations like that. So yeah, I think now is probably a good time for a break, maybe like 10 minutes, and then after that we'll kind of spend the next hour just tackling how I use my bodybuilder brush to kind of like create some creature designs as well. So and yeah, if anybody has any more questions, please feel free to ask throughout like the next stage because it's going to be more or less a lot of the same kind of stuff in terms of like the technique. But yeah, so yeah, by all means. So if you have a question, think about it, or if you don't have a question, think about one, and I'm happy to answer. So yeah, Pablo, maybe now it's a good time to take a quick break here.
Sure. This has been fantastic, Andy. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. Maybe explain what I did again really quick.
Yeah,
Just
go for it.
yeah, generally with brushes, just I play with like a really low focal shift and high intensity just to kind of at least for the way that I like to work, I just like to, get like really quick and dirty details to kind of create like interesting shapes. And I find for me, at least that's like my most effective approach to it is um just playing with like really kind of like confident and like bold strokes essentially. And then the last thing that I went over was just in the alpha panel, I play around a lot with like H tiles and V tiles, and that just essentially will like tile your alpha map or alpha texture that you're using. And you can use that to, you know, create like a lot of like interesting like seam lines or, you know, maybe some kind of like fabric texture like that. Just kind of like hint at, you know, some kind of material maybe. You know, just cool things like that. So actually I like that shape. Let's maybe add that to this guy here. Give him some kind of studs. Okay, so I think we're ready to move on to the creature stage. Again, this is going to be, pardon me, more or less a lot of the same techniques using the same brushes. The main difference is essentially how I kind of get started. Going back to like the use of base meshes, I created this brush just so that I can have like a really quick and easy way for me to block out you know, like a skeleton for my characters, so, or for my creatures I should say. So let's just for now just set this to, we're gonna keep this person visible because we're gonna be designing like, the idea is maybe designing some kind of creature that works alongside her in some kind of way. So I'll go looking at my reference here. I'm going to attempt, I've never really sculpted a cat before, to be honest with you. So this will be a little bit new, but I'm going to try and essentially, you know, use my bodybuilder brush to kind of like mimic, you know, some of the shapes in this skeleton in like a really quick way. So just so you guys have that. So the bodybuilder brush, you can do this again too with any brush. Like you can use this, you can use like the insert multi-tubes, you can use primitives. You could even use like a human model and just deform it if you really want to. There's no real right or wrong way to do this, and that's kind of why I love this software so much. Even when okay, we're good. So my hotkey for that is BAT. It might be different for you guys, but usually what I'll do is I'll start with actually like some kind of, let's say, like a root bone. And I'm just going to separate that. And I'm going to put that down here. And let's just call it kitty cat. And let's maybe unhide the one that we liked. Which one is it? It's this one. And Shift A is it isolates like all the other meshes, or it isolates the mesh you're working on. So, you know, when I'm working with two subtools like this, I'll oftentimes kind of just press Shift A over and over again to go into solo mode. So let's start with this. I'm not super worried about like the scale of this at this point because we can always scale it down, but let's try and match it as much as possible. So maybe what I'll do is I'll start with actually a rib cage. So I'm just going to, whoops. Oh, I think I got my symmetry wrong. I should say too that this like I've been working pretty much only in symmetry, but for like you definitely don't have to. You can be as asymmetrical as you want. In fact, it's probably like a good thing to add asymmetry to your characters, like when you can. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So this is the neck here. Let's maybe use this shape as like a decent like little head. Maybe let's rotate it. I'll turn off symmetry for a sec, hold shift until I get to 180 degrees, and then I'll turn symmetry back on so I know that it's mirrored, or it should be in theory. But if it's not, we can just hit mirror and weld. Maybe I did that wrong, but and we can, you know, like inflate as well. I use like I'll lay out these bones and then I'll hit it with like a quick inflate and then move it around. Go back to my brush. Let's I have a scapula. Insert mesh here that can kind of be handy just for like kind of giving me some kind of landmark as to maybe where the you know, the next joint might go for the arms. The pivot's set up so that like when you, it's going to be basically on the point that you draw, so you can just rotate it from there. You can also use shift and clone it, and then you know, like move it back into position. And yeah, I'll just be like really loose with this. Like this might not be completely anatomically correct, but we're just kind of trying to get like the rough shape of it. Make sure you're paying attention to from all sides as well. Probably should have grabbed a reference from the front actually to see what that looks like, but we're making a creature here that's based on like the feline skeleton, so let's just maybe kind of go with it and not think about it too much. This would be like the spine. Maybe we add in you know, something like this. This can be kind of like a hip joint of sorts. It's designed, this brush pack is designed to just be very you know, it's definitely not like an anatomically correct set. It's just, again, trying to mimic like the way that when I was learning how to draw, I might draw with this character. Like I might draw, you know, this a circle for a joint and then like a cylinder and then connect them and kind of pose it that way. That's actually, I think, wrong. So let's move that like this and then down like that, rotate it. Maybe we'll move this one in a little bit. Again, I'm not sure if that's exactly how a cat skeleton looks like from the back, but I think it looks cool, so I'm just gonna roll with it. You could you know, mask this and pull it out a little bit more if you want. Maybe rotate it. Maybe give the spine some like arch. Like so. Maybe we'll add in some kind of like hint at mass. It's having a hard time keeping the symmetry when I'm at the center point, so I'm just gonna move it over slightly and just kind of roll with it that way. Maybe bring this down. I'm not actually sure if this is what a cat looks like, but
Would
and then
you
we'll, you know,
spend time looking at like skeletons and stuff, or was that still too much planning?
I think like for me, it kind of, I guess like a good way that I've heard it put is like when you're doing characters, character artists can sometimes, you can almost kind of like picture them being like the engineers who are looking at a blueprint of a concept and they're trying to like nail it to execution, whereas the concept artists are more like architects and they're trying to, I mean, obviously you're still trying to execute like well, but you're kind of like coming up with the idea that then maybe like down the pipeline a character artist is gonna you know, actually put inside of like the project or 3D model. So at this stage here, for me, for my personal work, if I'm doing concept art, if I'm treating this as more of a study where I'm trying to learn what cats look like, then I'm definitely going to collect more reference and spend time. For the sake of this workshop, I'm really just trying to come up with like interesting prototypes and like thumbnails and stuff like that. So I have like a general idea as to like how a cat how a cat's skeleton functions. It doesn't look the prettiest like from this like in this stage right now, but um you know, like a 3D artist, maybe like a character artist, if they're going into model this, they might have they will be able to put that together based on the concept. They'll be able to look at that concept and be like, okay, if this is going down like my next step of the pipeline, you know, or I'm passing this off to a rigger animator, then they're gonna want these joints like in the right spot maybe, or they're gonna want like topology here, like edge loops here. So at this stage, like it, if you can like try and, you know, if you're trying to make a cat like a lion for like the Lion King or something like that, or like a realistic lion, then definitely I would probably look at more reference, maybe spend a little bit more time. But this stage, I'm just trying to essentially come up with like something that's kind of cool and you know, resembles a cat basically. So um, does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Within the bodybuilder IMM brush, I have fingers. You know, this is obviously not what a cat's paws would look like, but it's just kind of like a starting point. You don't even really need to use these if you don't want to. You can use like a square or a block or something else. But for me, you know, I kind of like these weird looking I kind of almost like frog-like feet on creatures that maybe they don't necessarily belong to. So it's just you know, it's just something. You don't even have to like connect them all the way, but if you want to, because they're different polygroups, you can use the move topological and just kind of like blend them in so that they dynamesh a little bit cleaner and maybe you get less like artifacts. Um maybe this bone, actually this bone like goes out like that. Like I'm trying to study a reference image, but also be quick here. So you know, this is gonna be kind of loose, but with okay, so I have like a skeleton. Its scale is like, you know, if this is like a mount or maybe like a sidekick character, you know, that's something that's I think you know, a decent proportion. So what we can do there now is I'm going to go to auto groups, and that would be where is that in here again? That's it's under subtool somewhere, or no, polygroups. Polygroups. Polygroups and then auto groups up here. And that's going to just give every like disconnected piece its own polygroup. And then I usually hit it with a mirror and weld so it's symmetrical again. So now like everything has its own polygroup and it's symmetrical and we're good to go kind of to the next stage. So at this point, again, I'm going to duplicate it and I'm going to hit Shift A to hide that mesh again. And I'm going to Dynamesh, but this time with groups on. And that's going to keep everything disconnected and in its own polygroup. And usually for this, I find that I need to crank the subdivision down or the resolution for the Dynamesh down quite a bit lower to get, if I leave it the same resolution, it's going to be like, at least in, usually when I do this, it ends up being like closer to like 1,000,000, 2,000,000 tries. So, yeah, so now we have everything kind of Dynameshed and it's all in its own separate, polygroup. So we can kind of go from there. From here, now I think I will, you know, at this stage, actually, let's just duplicate it again. Why not? It's very low poly, so there's like no real risk of like crashing ZBrush. At this point, I might just start using maybe, you know, like my skin build up brush and just kind of trying to think about, you know, where things might be connecting. Just kind of like hinting at maybe some kind of like just giving it some noise so it's not like a blank canvas is kind of the idea. Going back and inflating more. Um, let's try and like make it look more cat-like. Let's give it some big ears. Maybe there's I think yeah, let's use the scapula. Scapula we can use for ears. I mean, those kind of look like bat ears, but let's maybe pull those out a bit. Maybe give him or give this cat some eyeballs. Whoops. Just sink those in. They're kind of wide-eyed, right? So do that. And then I go through and use the dam standard. The thing too about, I should preface this too with using the tiles for the alphas is they're like universal as far as I know. I can't really find an option to save those within my like within individual brush settings. Maybe there's a way, but I haven't found it yet. So if you change that, you might have to go back and remove it if you know if you don't want it on like future things. So cat, they got like let's see some like wide. some like narrow snout type thing. They got those big like mouth. I don't even know what you call those. Big big cat lips. So let's maybe try and like hint at some of that. And already like at this stage, this is kind of like beyond where I even want to be continue working on this stage. I want to like move on again. So I'm going to actually, or I guess I should say like say you were happy with this at this stage, then I would duplicate it again, and this time I'd go through and dynamesh it again with the groups off and maybe crank up the subdivision level a little bit. And so now everything's going to be in one poly group and connected. And there you can kind of start going in and like figuring out how these things join together and how the muscles work. But yeah, it's like a very quick and easy way to kind of just get something going. Like you could definitely spend more time on the skeleton if you want, but it's this is kind of how I'd approach if I'm trying to think of design like a creature that's maybe a little bit less maybe realistic, or maybe its proportions are kind of crazy, or its skeleton is a little bit weird. Like yeah, so just wait for this to finish auto saving here. I think with creatures too, I kind of showed this in here, but like I did this frog yesterday or the night before, and like I just again was playing with the paintbrush or a layer brush on really low strength. Pardon me. And I just made the like the base material, the initial material, like a concept specular. And then I went through and I used like a really glossy material after that, just to kind of add some, like details to it, and to kind of like hint at maybe like his arms are really, you know, slippery looking, and like maybe that kind of like continues onto his ears and his eyeballs and like mouth or whatever. So okay, so I think part of the problem that I'm not liking about this is its legs and arms just kind of feel weird. So let's maybe just tweak those a little bit more. A rigger might get mad at me if I send them this, to be honest with you. If I were to send them this as like a concept or a sculpt, they might have some feedback, but that's okay. It's happened before. Like I've sculpted like dragons and birds and stuff like that for a game, and I had no idea, but there's like a pretty standard, I guess, way that they need to be posed in order to be rigged like efficiently. And that was just, like an opportunity to learn more about that. So it's especially when I think when you're doing like concept art, I think it's like I feel like your job is to come up with something that's unique and interesting and like a cool novel product for people, but something that's also grounded in reality. So, you know, it doesn't take a lot of time like using this kind of process to come up with something that's maybe a little bit radical or out there. But I mean, worst case, you didn't spend that much time on it. So that's kind of the idea. Be a skin build up. Yeah, okay, there it is. Every time I add a new brush, like my hotkeys subtly change, and so I have to like rememorize them. Turn off RGB. Let's actually add RGB information to this. Maybe we'll give him, kind of going back to that reference, like maybe we'll make him blue. Maybe not that blue. Maybe something more like, or less saturated for now. And then we can kind of build up the saturation in like the highlights or something. So we have that. Let's just kind of go crazy. Maybe pick something that's kind of like contrasts it a bit and just start playing around. I mean, if you want to like demonstrate fur, you can, like, there's fur brushes. Like I have one of Pablo's fur brushes here, and that's like a great brush. You can add RGB to that, and you can go through and start adding fur. And that's like a really quick way to kind of just demonstrate that this character has like hair. So, but that's something that I'd probably add like a little bit further down once I kind of have like the forms in a place that I like them. Let's go even crazier and just start kind of blending that in. Let's put my reference here. I have two cats and I like routinely forget what they look like. It's crazy. Like I see them almost all day every day, and it's crazy like how you just could see something so often and just not really know exactly what they look like. So let's maybe, maybe he, going back to that bull reference too, maybe he's got some like bullish features. Start blending that in. This is kind of like, this is I find with creatures, like sometimes I do have to get a little bit more detailed to kind of sell like what I'm going for. Um, as opposed to like the costume design, I feel like I can hint more at like, I don't know, the archetype and maybe their role in their world with just using like those simple layer brushes with the creatures. Maybe you got to get a little bit more kind of like in the weeds with picking out like secondary shapes potentially. So I mean, maybe this guy's got like 3 sets of gums or something like that. We can start to, just kind of like draw that in. Maybe like start pulling out some, some shapes, thinking again about like our big, medium, small layer caking and just kind of drawing out or like mimicking, repeating shapes, but maybe they just have like subtle variations. Maybe we, get some like shadow, maybe some like dark red, and we put that, in the ears, and we put that like down here. This mesh is actually kind of high resolution for what I want to do, so I'm just gonna Dynamesh again, crank it down. So now it's in a shape where, or it's in a, it has a resolution that I'm like more comfortable manipulating for this stage. You can also use a brush, any brush you want really, but you can go down to stroke. Or wait, where is it again? I have it in my palette here, but lazy step, understroke. Yeah, okay. So stroke, lazy mouse, and then lazy step, and you can use that and like crank that up, and then you can kind of like draw out cool shapes, and then like blend those in, with the rest of the anatomy to try and get some, kind of like hint at like what the underlying skeleton might look like, or skull, I should say. So if these are the eyes, maybe let's use the inflate brush and change our material to, well, let's just make sure that we have our material set to the one we want, and then we can, use like a glossy material with like the inflate brush and just kind of like start to kind of create like some kind of eye forms, and maybe we change the material up again and give it like some kind of darker color. Oh, crank the layer intensity a bit, and we can start to, kind of like sketch out maybe what some of the eyes look like. Maybe the bones have like their own like where the bone protrudes like through the skin, maybe that has its own kind of color um as well. So but yeah, at this stage it's just kind of like, just at this point I'm just trying to blend in like these these masses with these spheres and these bones, and just trying to make them, look like they're functioning anatomy. Maybe not necessarily perfectly correct or mimicking of nature, but they look like maybe they could work. Sometimes you will get little dents like this when your Z intensity is a little too high and you're sculpting on the other side. In that case, you just turn on back face mask and you can fill that in. I might use dam standard and kind of just like hint at maybe where some like skin is stretching and you know, maybe where some of like the muscles are coming together. Like maybe there's I don't know if it's called this on a cat, but like where the pectoral muscles are kind of like coming together. Maybe cat's got abs. I kind of like the idea of it having like maybe this cat has like some kind of kangaroo pouch. Maybe that's where it keeps its young, you know? So maybe and maybe that's I'm not sure how kangaroos work, but maybe that's part of his like his rib cage like extends and its offspring have like this um you know cool pouch. So I'm gonna turn my lazy step back down to something low, and I'm just gonna kind of like actually let's use skin buildup brush, set it to a higher intensity, and maybe we can kind of like hint at the rib cages like that. Maybe his spine, something like so, you know. Maybe if his bones are like this kind of color coming out, maybe that kind of falls all the way through. So, like, I don't love this concept at all, to be honest, and I'm kind of bored of it. So, like at this stage, I would probably go back to like my Dynameshed one, and I'd either completely make like a new skeleton from scratch if I'm just kind of designing any creature, or I might go back to just, you know, this one that I've Dynameshed together, and or actually this one needs to be Dynameshed without groups. I might duplicate that, or I would duplicate that, I should say, and then like I might just make something completely different. Like maybe this one, you know, for like big, bold, like silhouette changes, the inflate brush, like I absolutely love it, especially for like organic, um, you know, characters and creatures. You can really quickly just go in and like maybe this character is more of like a, I don't know, jacked rabbit, cow, goat thing. Um, you know, even like that. Oops. Yeah, Dynamesh. It's gonna maybe be some artifacts there, but now we can go through and like we have like a whole new start. We can just kind of go through and start thinking about the way that these muscles again like form together, and you know maybe we hint at like some eyeballs and maybe a mouth, some kind of nose. It's kind of like a cute like bear actually. So that's like more or less the process. Um, I'm cool to just like stick around and hang out, and if anybody has like any more questions or they want to see something again, or like I talked to you fast over a part and I missed something or you missed something, I'm happy to just kind of chat if anybody has anything, because really this is more or less it. I mean, the next stage that I'd probably do after kind of figuring out like what the anatomy looks like is I might you know take this character and start to maybe add some, you know, if they're like joined at the hip, like going traveling through a world or whatever, and they have like this narrative and you know their sidekicks and they're intertwined, then I might start to echo some of the, you know, the visual shapes, like the design language that we have like for this character on top of this bear. Like maybe this bear has like a saddle that's like very you know, let's just try it. Like maybe the bear has a saddle. Let's hide her actually. Some kind of saddle that's, you know, got like a lot of cool, like jagged points and like hard surface looking shapes to it. And we can like Dynamesh it and go back and just start to kind of figure out maybe there's we can go back to like um our leather. I mean, our soft leather material, add MRGB to our layer brush, and kind of like add some, straps to go around.
I can see her holding some sort of space lance. Some cat
space.
jousting.
Oh, yeah, totally. Exactly. Like you can really, that's kind of the whole point of this, is just to be able to, I mean, this is how I have fun designing characters like quickly in my free time. Because I just wanted to come up with cool shapes, cool things, like start to create like worlds and, do world building as quickly as possible. And it's not every design is going to be perfect. Like these aren't, anything remarkable, I would say, in terms of design. But the idea is that, you do like 10 more of these, and hopefully you have some elements that you can kind of like combine together, going back to like the 2D silhouette design. Like that kind of process. You can mishmash these shapes together, and hopefully by having, like these 10 characters or 20 or 30, over the course of like a day, maybe, yeah, you have something that you can work off and that you feel confident, like pitching to the rest of your team or to a client or it's like any kind of stakeholder, or, even just like your own internal, um, critique, right? Critic. So yeah, so that's more or less it. I could definitely spend more time like just um, you know, blending in these shapes together. I guess one more thing that I'd probably do is, I mean, going back to for creature design is, this character is like a mount, but I would say uh if it maybe was a little bit more like if it had like a more of a role in society, then maybe you want to give it some kind of like costume or armor or something like that, and you can use that using the same techniques that we did before. I would say the one difference between this piece and the pieces that I've shown you is I would just, if I'm going to kit bash like armor together really quickly, um and kind of go through the same process with the gear, then I would make that its own subtool, just so that I have, this, base anatomy, and then I can further iterate on the gear, um, with like on a separate mesh that I can play around with. That way they don't get, in some cases you may want to combine them all together, but I find in most cases, if I'm doing like a heavily armored person or if they're completely covered in costume, then maybe it's not a bad idea to have like a separate base mesh. Like sometimes, as we autosave, I'll go through one more quick thing. This is kind of I use this technique less and less now, but it still can come in handy in some cases. I'll show you. Let's go back to the top. Let's go to our like mail. Let's just remove this history, please. Yeah, okay. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just like duplicate this mesh, give this its own color, and then I will just like hit it with a -1 inflate or negative well, let's make sure this one's visible too. Get out of solo mode. Okay, let's hide everything else. Kitty cat, you can go. You can go. Yeah, so you can see like by inflating it, it's now underneath this mesh. And so now if you use the layer brush, you can kind of like draw on it like that as well. And so maybe you want to create something that's like maybe you have a character that's fully skin, like they're showing off their whole body, but they have maybe some like gold runes or something like that, or some gold etchings. Then you can, change your material to gold and kind of play around with it like that. And then you can also what you can do too, like say this character is completely covered from head to toe, except he just want his face to show. Let's just give him something that's a little bit more contrasty. Then you can use your select lasso brush, like delete that, close the holes, Dynamesh. Whoops. Say Dynamesh at a higher resolution. And then from here, you know, maybe at that point we can like hide this mesh. And we can bring in I mean, let's just use a female head, for example. Like you can use a female head with like the skin shader applied. And so when you're doing like your final like if you decide that you like this concept, like the this is might be like a final stage that I do to kind of uh maybe just get something that like looks a little bit more like skin than like the concept material. So when I go to overpaint, like I have those hues and I have you know, something that has like specular value and like highlights and shadows and stuff like that. So I can kind of go in and you know, if the rest of the mesh has oops, if the rest of the mesh has like, but the character design has like this kind of material or some other material, then maybe it's a good idea to kind of just separate the head as well. So that's kind of, you know, just another little handy technique that sometimes I use for like the final stages. But that's honestly pretty much it. That's
I got
really,
a
I think,
question if you
yeah.
still have time.
Yeah,
If
of
you want
course.
to give your character like a duster coat kind of thing or a cape
Yeah.
or
Oh,
something, how do
that's a
you
great question.
go about doing that sort of like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up actually, because that's something that I've struggled with this process.
I
And
always
that's
find
kind of
that
like,
when I'm doing like clothing, especially like capes and stuff, that like I get them too thin and then they dynamesh them, they get like
mm-hmm.
holes in them, and I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that you know, I've definitely wrestled with as well. So what I've kind of done recently is I use like if I'm making like a jacket or something, I have this. It's maybe this isn't necessarily the best. Let me do it on a different character that has like less bulky armor or something like that. So yeah, I have two jackets in here. One has folds, like the collar is folded up and the other one's folded down. And I just made those really quickly separately just so that I can, you know, have like some versatility when I go to Dynamesh. Um, so I might take that and like separate this. Let's unmask everything. Hide this. Oh, actually, I gotta auto polygroup it quick because they're all the same polygroup. Hide this, and then like I'm just gonna take that lower section. Oh, sometimes I get the order slightly mixed up. Hide that, mask this, unhide, and then mask everything. So now you just have this part selected, and now you can, you know, kind of play around with it like that. And then I would probably, I would probably unmask everything again. Why is it? And then like inflate it because it's like a little bit of a thinner um mesh. And then go back, maybe, whoops. This is getting a little bit messy. This is yeah, this is probably if I'm doing something with a duster or like a jacket, um, I'm probably going to block that in like right away. Just so that because I know it's probably going to be like an important part of their silhouette. So what the heck? Somehow I duplicated it. You can kind of get the idea though. Like I'll just kind of maneuver that around and play around with it and until I get something that I like and then Dynamesh it. And then from there I might add like just some kind of like folds just some like hints at fabric. This is very quick and dirty, but hopefully that kind of explains the process a little bit. It's
Yeah,
gonna,
definitely.
it's gonna, yeah, it's gonna, you know, I find that like when I had this, it's kind of, I mean, I'm not gonna be able to do anything under there, and it does kind of break some of the, like it breaks a lot of the detail, like if you're adding it onto like something that you've already detailed. But again, like that's just kind of like an opportunity to maybe add something else,
Would
right?
you
Like,
would you possibly leave it as just a separate subtool, or
yeah, that's another option too. Yeah, for sure. Like if the coat is like a focal point, it's something that I think is going to have like a lot of character to it or be important to their character, then I might want to iterate on that. If it's something that I think I'm going to be iterating on a lot, then I basically make it its own subtool, is essentially the idea. So like if it's a helmet, then it might be its own subtool. Um, Usually not gloves, but yeah, like a jacket, something like that. If it's a like a hero prop or something that might be important, then I will do that there too. Um,
You can always
and
try
then
to, when you're at your lowest subdivision, you'll block out the form and then just use your dynamics, and you can thicken it up that way once you have the form, and just duplicate
yeah,
that, and then you can do the mesh and all that, and it'll make your life a little bit faster too.
yeah, absolutely. Like that's kind of the beauty of ZBrush is there's a million ways that you can achieve everything. I guess like any 3D software. And so this is like my workflow that I've kind of like gotten pretty efficient with. Um, but there might be something that you like prefer. You might want to uh you might spend time using Z modeler to like build some props or build some assets and then like kit bash them that way and then like duplicate them and keep them their own subtools and kind of position them and place them in ways that make sense to you. Or you might go through and like let's say like you might use like an extraction or something and oops, where'd that go? Oh, sorry, one sec. Yeah, so you might go through and, yeah, like you're saying, abstract and like subdivide or use dynamic subdivision, right? And then apply it and then dynamesh it. And then it's its own piece. And you can, maybe play around with some forms. And then from there, you can change the pivot point to be on the individual origin and duplicate it. Whoops. Duplicate it and like bring it around and maybe like mimic that throughout the rest of your design somewhere else. Or even like combine it. You can combine these shapes and maybe make something like crazy. Like maybe that's some kind of, I don't know, belt, right? So yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can do this. I think like to kind of summarize the workflow is that I'm going for speed here and I'm just trying to get out as many bad ideas as possible. You've seen a few of them tonight or today, wherever you are. And by getting through all those bad ideas, the idea is that hopefully you're able to find some good ideas out of that. And there's a lot of ways you can choose to like refine and polish these sculpts, these concept sculpts that you do. None of like there's so many ways that you can choose to do it to like present to get to a presentable state. But the point is that like I don't want to waste time polishing something that I don't think works. So I'm trying to get out as many bad ideas to come up with something kind of interesting and like unique before I start presenting and polishing. So that's yeah, that's really kind of it. I mean, I'm sure if there's more questions, then maybe there's more, but I think we've almost been 3 hours here, so maybe if there's a few more questions, I'd be happy to answer those. And otherwise, I hope you got something out of this. And yeah, feel free to like take those brushes and make them your own. And if you guys are interested, in the Discord afterwards, I think it'd be cool if maybe if you guys wanted to like practice these skills, maybe we can have some kind of design challenge based on a prompt, maybe you can just come up with a couple, you know, a couple iterations of something that you think meets the spec, or you know, doesn't necessarily have to. It could be whatever you want it to be. But yeah, it'd be cool if maybe we can like it'd be cool to see some, you know, maybe usage of this technique or of the layer brush especially. I love the layer brush so much. If you got anything out of that, I think it's that out of this workshop, I think it's that maybe the layer brush can be like utilized more, especially for concepting. So that's pretty much it.
I do have one more
Anybody has-
question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, do you do much with hair?
Yeah, with hair, that's a great question as well. For hair, I have a hair brush. Yeah, I probably should have shown this too, actually. So I might, let's give her blue hair. This is just an insert brush. And again, going back to like the curves, usually I'll start off using like continuous Z, and I'll just, whoops, hair one.
Is this default ZBrush or?
No, this is not. This is I paid for this brush. I believe I got it on ArtStation. Maybe I can while I'm answering more questions, I can send a I can quickly find it and send a link if anybody's interested. But this
Awesome.
is a great brush set because like all these insert meshes are like their own individual strands, so you can polygroup them. Like you can auto group, polygroup them, and then they're individual strands that you can move. Like using the move individually using the move topological brush. And so I'd probably make this definitely my own subtool as well, and you know, kind of iterate on the hair there. If it's something, you know, maybe a little bit more basic, then I would probably just let's go like maybe clay brush is probably a good one. Turn on my RGB, and I would just kind of start like sculpting like that, just to kind of again like indicate that there's hair. You know, maybe add some, you know, some like depth and some volume, that kind of thing. So it kind of depends on what you're going for. If it's you know, if I was going to be rendering and like if I was designing a bust, like if I was just trying to send like you know, a face concepts, if I was just trying to like do like design somebody like a character's face, then I would probably spend a lot more time on like iterating on the hair, um as well as the face too, for sure. Because like this is kind of like a, you know, a stock base mesh face. I didn't do any work to it for this design, but if it was you know, it's something that you probably do want to focus on a little bit more than I did in this workshop, to be honest. But it's something also like if I'm primarily designing a costume, then I'm not going to spend too much time on the head, because anybody can wear that costume in theory, right? So but yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I completely neglected here. Let me look that up. But if anybody has any more questions, I'm just gonna drop a link in the chat to the hair. But if you go on ArtStation Marketplace, you can type in like hair insert mesh brush. You can find one that works for you. Like there's more stylized ones that are, you know, good for like stylized projects. Actually, those ones would probably be really good for blocking out because they're usually, you know, thicker and have more volume, so you can probably get more of like the shape in quicker. So maybe that's actually something that I should explore. Yeah, this is the one I got. I'll just drop a link here in the chat. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, this is
Uh,
super helpful, Andy.
Great. I just saw. Oh, okay. Michelle's question got answered just about continuous Z and fire the Z buttons. Okay. Yeah, but that's, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, if there's no more questions. Thank you guys all for like coming, and it means a lot that you guys all showed up. It's you know, it was a really good experience, and I hope you guys got stuff from it. So but
The link kind of just shows me my library on ArtStation. It doesn't seem
oh,
to.
oh, Okay, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that was
That's all right.
I sent you guys. Yeah, let me go to the
I
actual
think you
product
can just
page.
remove the word library, and the character should show up.
Okay,
Yep.
let's have a look.
Perfect. Now thanks Andy. This has been
Yeah.
fantastic to watch the whole process in real time. It's been awesome, and of course thanks everyone else that joined. We had
Yeah.
at some point over 150 people here, so that's really cool to see.
Oh, that's great.
And like Andy suggested, I think it's going to be great if we just basically move this conversation so that the workshop doesn't kind of like finish now, as in with this video, but we actually move this conversation to Discord and we have that dedicated channel. And yeah, we can definitely set up some sort of contest, something to put these new acquired skills into practice, and
Yeah.
it will be cool to see what you guys come up with.
Yeah, it really would be. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Maybe we can come up with like some kind of prompt or something like that, or put it together. And yeah, maybe I can do that tomorrow or something. First thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also just to reiterate, this is being recorded. So as soon as we have the recordings, hopefully everything goes to plan, we'll be make that available to those of you who are here and then who register for the workshop as well. And also, we're going to try to set up something so that you have basically all these resources and things that Andy has shared
Mm-hmm.
throughout this workshop. But yeah, just keep in mind that the channel in Discord is going to be there. So anything that you want to ask, or if you have further questions after you try this yourself and these workflows, you can definitely ask in that channel as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely around and yeah, open to any questions that you guys might have, and I would love to see the work. And yeah, it was really nice talking to if it was a different change of pace talking to for 3 hours straight. Usually, like I said, I'm listening to like some kind of song on loop for 3 hours. So yeah, it was it was really good. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Andy, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, sounds great. Take care, guys. Happy
See ya.
concepting.